You're listening to the StoryShout podcast, hosted by Kelsey Jones. We're a weekly podcast dedicated to destigmatizing failure and laughing at our normalcy. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review on iTunes.
Hey everyone, welcome to StoryShout. My name is Kelsey Jones, and I'm joined here today by one of my friends from the industry, Casey Markee. Casey, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Kelsey. Thanks for having me today.
Casey and I met at some marketing conference. I don't know which one, but over the years, we've even been on panels together, done site audit clinics together. So I know, Casey, you specialize in SEO mainly for food bloggers, which is kind of a delicious area to specialize.
Yeah, that is correct. It is never boring, but it has been terrible for my waistline. We'll just leave it at that for sure.
That's true. I could see that. So, Casey, the reason why you're on, what do you suck at?
Well, I'm glad that you didn't have my wife on because it would be a litany of items. But for today's audience, I think we're going to work on work-life balance. I literally suck at work-life balance. And I think for those of you on the call who are self-employed or individual consultants or who are executives on companies you founded, you know what I'm speaking about. It is pretty terrible sometimes.
Yeah, I think, and working from home, like you said, it's just hard to not be able to turn it off. I don't know when this episode will go live exactly, but a colleague of Casey and mine, Russ Jones, he passed away recently, just randomly in his sleep. Great guy, wasn't 40 yet. And it's things like that, had 3 daughters, things like that really make you stop and think, what am I working for? Am I doing the best I can with my work-life balance and making sure my priorities are right? So I think it is a good thing for you to know that you suck at that. And one good thing for you and any other business owners is when you own the business, you do have a little bit more flexibility to schedule yourself out or not take on specific types of clients. So what kind of issues have you seen with the work-life balance? Like, how has that affected you?
Very good question. And again, I know this isn't going to be news for a lot of people, but when you are the main guy, and business is good. Let me clarify that. When business is good, it makes you want to work more, and you always look things as X's and O's with regards to, oh my gosh, if I've got 4 audits this week, but hey, if I go ahead and I've just been contacted for another audit, if I go ahead and book that here, maybe on 1:00 on Friday, that's an extra $1,500 for that week. I mean, I'm literally paying my mortgage. Maybe I should just go ahead and do that. Yeah. And that's tough to get away from. I routinely work probably 70 to 80 hours a week. Wow. And it's comfortable. It's easy to do. You just basically set up on the couch with your laptop and you basically work away. And then, and how my situation works is I work exclusively, as Kelsey said, with food and lifestyle bloggers. So I tend to be in demand for audits. And so they'll contract for an audit date. I'll prepare by running detailed reporting, deliver an audit report, and then we'll spend a couple hours on the call reviewing the audit findings. And then, of course, there's the follow-up from the audit. Usually that involves anywhere from a 15 to a 25-page follow-up report, and then multiple weeks following up with the blogger to talk about how they're implementing checklist items and fixing recipe templates and so on. But I mean, it is a lot of hours. And, I tend to think, I'm fortunate. I don't have to work outside where I'm in San Diego County right now. And for those of you who have been following the news, especially for the entire West Coast, we pretty much live on the surface of the sun right now. It's crazy. So we're having a lot of issues and 100+ degree. Who would have not thought that I would move to San Diego and I would literally have 4 out of 7 days in the span of a week, there was 100+ degrees. Yeah. Crazy. So, but yeah, that's the situation I'm dealing with. And it's tough. I know I could make changes to do it. And it's hard to do, as many of you know, because you want to grow your business. You never know in this crazy world how long things are going to be good.
Right.
And with my company, MediaWise, things have been good for a while, and you just continue to let's just ride the milk train, so to speak, as long as we can, because you never know how long the party's going to last.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think for me, when I was running my own business full time, a lot of the requests I would get for work, like content audits or SEO or whatever, to me, it was like easy. And I'm doing air quotes where it's not easy, but because I've done them before, I like it and I know how to do it. So it was hard for me to turn down that work because I could do it and somebody's offering me money. So it's kind of like what you touched
Exactly.
on. Why would I not do it? I could, like you said, exactly like you said, I could just knock it out real quick. But for me, it never actually was something I could knock out real quick. You know, it would always kind of balloon then into more work, or they needed some
Exactly.
changes. And so it's just difficult to have somebody trying to hand you money and you have to say no.
And you not wanting to take it, especially for those of you on the call who have older children. I have a son who just graduated high school. He's going off to college. So, again, now we're going to get into the expensive years. So that makes you want to think, okay, hey, let's work hard for at least the next 4 years to get him through college. But then, oh, by the way, I have a daughter who's also just finished her junior year. She's going into her senior year. And of course, same thing. She's going to go off to college. So yeah, you're like, oh, I might as well, work as much as you can, building up the bank funds or whatever to make sure that we can get them through college, no problem. But again, and I know you and I were talking about this, Kelsey, it's a double-edged sword because you want to spend as much time as you can with your family. I mean, my son, I love him to death. He's going away to college. He's going to Colorado State. He's going to be leaving in August. You want to spend as much time with him as you can over the summer. We've at least scheduled one vacation, but it is very tough. I'll use an example. My daughter, specifically, she lettered on the track team this year, and they had a track banquet, and the banquet was on a day where, I had an audit call that went long, and then I had to do the follow up on that, and I just could not make the track banquet. Now, it was also like 300 degrees out. So that was also like, you know what? Hey, I've got this work to do. And oh, by the way, I don't like it. I don't like sitting in one place for 3 hours on the surface of the sun. And so, it was totally understandable, especially, my wife was able to go. That was fine. She dreaded it because it was very hot and everything, but she's glad she went. But I mean, it's tough to make those decisions. And I justify it as saying, well, I had to do this stuff, and she'll have another track banquet next year. So that's how I do it. But it's tough to make those, what do they call equivalencies?
Yeah.
Assumptions, exclusions, whatever you do to do that. But it's very rough too, because it has, and I know many of you can relate to this being in the time of COVID, it is really the amount of work I've done over the last couple of years specifically. It's just been crazy, and it's caused me to not go to the gym as much. It's caused me to not see friends as much. We definitely, of course, we didn't travel much. We just worked, and the downsides of that obviously are, my health is certainly not nearly what it was. And then, we just briefly talk about the situation with Russ dying unexpectedly. I mean, this out of nowhere, guy's only 39 years old, no real health issues. When your time is up, your time is up. And so I really have started to think about that routinely, and I need to say more. I need to say no more and start managing my time more effectively, because the benefits clearly are going to be less fatigue, better health, and more time with friends and family. And that's something that we really have to stop and ponder every now and then, for sure.
One thing that, now that I'm in a full-time role that has been kind of different is a lot of my work right now is like management and very focused, detailed work. And so at the end of the day, I am just exhausted. But I still have Slack and Skype and whatever else on my phone. So occasionally, my son's home, we've eaten dinner, my husband's home. I will get on my phone and maybe answer a Slack message or something like that. And I notice that my son is trying to get my attention more. He'll physically push the phone out of my hand. He's a toddler, by the way, if I'm listening. Will push the phone out of my hand. Like, he's very obviously wants my attention. Both him and my husband will talk to me at the same time. And I'm someone that a couple of people think I have ADHD, have come and told me that. I don't know if I do, but it's very overwhelming.
I think a lot of successful people probably have it and don't realize it. I have ADHD when it comes to me walking into a butcher shop. So I can't really keep my attention on anything specifically because I like meat. So maybe not the same thing. Maybe
Right.
situational ADHD. That's what you have, Kelsey. Situational ADHD.
But it's sad that I realize that my son just wants my attention. And since me and my husband both work
Sure.
full time, we only have a couple hours with him every day on the weekdays, until he goes to bed. And so for me, it's been really important to decrease that phone time, because even though, like work never stops. I feel like, especially if you're a business owner like you, or you're in something like marketing and technology,
Absolutely.
there is
Yeah.
always something you could be doing. There's a report you could run. You could finally clear out your email inbox, whatever. I'm sure you owe somebody something. So it's really hard to just like at the end of the day have a certain stop point and you're done and you don't look at messages on your phone. The people I work with are pretty good about not asking for things out of work hours, but I still find myself checking my email at night or just checking Slack or Skype or whatever, just in case. And so that's been hard for me is once I turn off the computer, I then have it on my phone. And I've noticed that has affected my family time.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, like I said, I mentioned to you that I basically only come down and use my office for calls or consultations or Skype meetings, but I usually just work in the living room in front of the TV. It's more comfortable. And I'll just have a laptop on and probably the noise in the background, more white noise than anything, and I'll just be typing away. And, the kids will come home, they'll say hi, and then they'll immediately go to their rooms and start playing games or talk on their phones or whatever. So, I mean, that's just acceptable. And then, my wife, of course, she works very hard. She's an attorney. They have their own law firm. So she'll come back and, we try to have a little free time, maybe between 6 and 8 where we eat dinner and do whatever. But she's the same as I. We basically sit in front of the TV with our phones or the computer and we'll just, talk intermittently if something's funny or have a show on in the background. But no, it's bad. I mean, I remember when years ago, when you found the time, for example, and I know you believe that, I know this is basically all parents have these stories. Let's say you just take the day off and you take your son out to, you have breakfast together and then you take him over and you have him ride the trains at the park, or we go down and do the, for us, it was a wild animal park. We go through the wild animal park and then we come back and we stop for dinner or something. And then we come back and, he's tired and we put him to bed and you put him to bed and he leans up and he says, "Thanks, Dad. That's like the best day ever." We don't have enough of those. And now they're, as the kids have grown up, I know that I won't have many of those again. So it's important we try to make the time to do that. And, I'm fortunate. I don't work for a corporation. I have only myself to blame. I need to budget more time. Yesterday, for example, we took the kids to the fair. By kids, I mean literally teenagers, their friends and boyfriends and girlfriends. And so it was 6 of us in a car with the wife and I, the 2 kids, and then their friends and boyfriends. And it was just, it was great. But I'm going to tell you, it destroyed me because I have not been able to get out and do much more. I have not exercised enough, and just walking, 8,000 to 10,000 steps around the fair, it was tough on me. And when I got back and we were unloading some stuff, I literally threw my back out. I had to lay down for 30 minutes and before I was recovered. And, it's terrible. And so you realize that, man, you've got to make changes. And so, I mean, I used to be a regular CrossFitter, would CrossFit 4, 5, 6 times a week. Don't do that. Haven't done that in about a year and a half. I just need to get back to doing things regularly. And of course, we're in the middle of a move. We're switching homes. So that adds on, of course, to the stress of your regular day-to-day lives because, we're boxing everything up and getting ready to move that. I'm not sure when this will air, but about the second week of July is when we'll be making the move over to the new home. And yeah, there's just not enough time. So take it from me. Find more time to spend with your friends. Find more times to spend with your family. Find more time to go out and work out so that you can swing the health pendulum back into your favor. We are losing people right and left that we never thought we would lose, not only as Kelsey and I have experienced recently in our industry, but just personal as well. I mean, you never know when it's your time. And I want to be around for my wife and kids for many more years to come. And I realize, boy, I've got to really up my health game. And that's just going to require me to work less And that's tough. It is very tough when you've been working 78 hours for years building up a business, and then the business is at the level where it's very successful and you're booking literally 8 months in advance. Now you've got to take your foot off the gas and dial back and really kind of enjoy some of that success by, spending all that money you're making and making sure that your priorities are correct. And it's just tough. And anyone who says that they've got this figured out are complete nonsense. I mean, I always think about, we share a lot of friends together. We share, Jesse and Keith down in Austin, Jesse and Keith, two well-known SEOs down there. They love the Japanese culture. And I always remember I think it might have been them, maybe it wasn't, but they introduced the concept of the term karoshi, Karoshi to me. And karoshi it basically is a Japanese term. It literally translates into overworked death. And karoshi is an actual issue in Japan that they've dealt with for centuries. It is a Japanese term relating to an occupational sudden mortality, mostly heart attacks, strokes, and stress-induced morbidities that happen to the Japanese population because they have been working nonstop for centuries. It's routine for them to work the hours that Kelsey and I have worked in many cases, where they're in many cases, some of them were working 100+ hours a week for these big corporations. And it has become so bad that Japanese lawmakers just recently, and we're talking June 2021, they're looking to pass legislation moving to a 4-day work week so that people can have, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday to recover and spend time with their families. And hopefully that passes, because it's an epidemic there. It's something that, we are familiar with it, but we don't call it that here. So yeah, it's certainly, this work-life balance is certainly not something that is germane here to the United States. It is a worldwide epidemic for sure.
Well, and I think it's also, especially in America, I've never lived anywhere else besides America, so I don't know what it's like in other countries, but sometimes it's culturally acceptable, like the hustle culture, to work yourself to the bone.
Right.
And if you're like if you're an entrepreneur, that should be normal for you. I do think there is some pushback on that recently, and I don't know if it's just the younger generation that's a little bit more aware of that. But, it used to be like you would be embarrassed if you weren't working. When I was first starting out, what I did when I was freelancing full time is I set myself a daily amount of money that I wanted to make per day. I think it was it was probably like $500 or something. And once I hit it, I let myself be done. I would go read in the park. I'd go walk my dog. And there were days when I was very proud of myself. It was amazing for anxiety and not being overworked. But then I also would feel guilt or shame about that. I wouldn't tell anyone. I wouldn't tell my friends who were, stuck in an office working. So it was almost like I had to hide that I had good work-life balance. Now in the role I'm in now, it's very flexible.
Sure.
It's more results only work environment, where as long as you're available and your work's done, doesn't really matter what hours you put in. And my husband and I have had discussions about that, because he's at a new job now, but he was completely overworked at his old job. And so, I would tell him, I've been working on something since 3:30 or 4 that wasn't work related. And he would get kind of upset because he would be drowning in work. And so it was a competition, but it was almost like, how dare you, I'm like, he was more jealous, and he admits that, but it was more like, God, I'm so exhausted. I'm never going to get the work done I have. And here you are, like, running this errand for our family or something. It's just not, it's a competitive, corrosive culture. And that is definitely not helpful as well.
No, especially for your spouse. I mean, I don't want to be, it's always a concern especially for males. I'm not being misogynist about it. I just think that we tend to, I don't want to be the person that's 20 years from now, we're single, we're divorced, we don't see our kids, we hardly see any friends, because we've let our job overwhelm us with regards to our what we consider priorities. I certainly don't want to have that happen to me. And I understand that that is literally a common attitude that I run into from friends who are in their middle stage of life, like I am. I'm, late 40s, and, we keep thinking, oh, we're working this hard so that we can enjoy our retirement. That's not how we should be living our life. We should be enjoying the fruits of our labors now, not in 20 years, especially if we don't know we're going to make it another 20 years. It's crazy. So we really have to, dial that back and spend that money that we're making and make sure that our children have good, solid memories of us as they go out and start their own lives, and make sure that, our spouses know that they're our number one and top priority, and that we spend as much time with them as we can. And it's tough. It is certainly something I struggle with. My wife is a saint. Seriously. I just have to continue to buy her new horses, and we're usually good. She's an equestrian, as is my daughter, and we always kid about how many horses we have, and I always say it's a lot. She's very smart. She only buys she only buys paints I can't even think of the specific term, but she always buys specific horses. They all look very similar, so I never know how many we have. I could be looking at the same horse 3 times. I have no idea. Maybe it's maybe 3 of those. It's genius. So who knows how many horses we have? I'm always the last to know.
That's funny. That made me think about when you're talking about like family and divorce can happen if someone is too overworked and just out of touch.
Exactly.
I had a great aunt a few years ago. She got cancer. She got pancreatic cancer, which is one of the deadliest forms.
Yeah, very aggressive.
And she lived in Lawrence, which I'm in Kansas City for those of you listening. So it's about a 45-minute drive, and she would have to drive to do her chemo twice a week in Kansas City. And so I started going with her and being with her through that, and literally sitting there in a room of cancer patients and watching her health decline. And, she completed chemo, but ended up not making it. And
I'm sorry to hear that.
Oh, thank you. That really changed my perspective on work-life balance and priorities, because I was more flexible, and I was at Search Engine Journal at that time, and I had clients. I was able to, take off the 2 hours or whatever, 3 hours that I needed in the middle of the day to be there with her for her chemo. And it was really hard to literally watch it happen. Not something that I, of course, looked forward to doing, but I remember telling myself at the time, if you're going to regret it if you don't be there with her for that time.
Right. Yeah.
And it shouldn't have to take something like that to make your priorities change. You would hope that it wouldn't. But at the end of the day, I mean, why are we making money if not for having the freedom to take care of our children, but also see our family when we want? Me and my mom went to Italy, and I was able to pay for our hotel and, other things like that because of my success in the career I had. And if, what is money if not as a vessel to help us spend time with those we care about? And so going through that helped me.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we can't take it with us. I mean, I always see, this race to the top there are no winners on there. And that's why I admire, if you can admire a billionaire, I certainly do admire, for example, Warren Buffett, who's already given away half of his fortune and is well on his way to doing the second half. But again, you just, you do what you can. I mean, it is a constant struggle. I mean, I've turned down speaking engagements. I've turned down meeting friends for dinner, and it's I don't know why I've done that. I mean, it would have been great to meet those friends for dinner or go out, but I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that, hey, maybe we need to start thinking about taking time for ourselves as well. It's okay to say no to a dinner invitation if you're going to spend a quiet night home with your family. We only have so many of those. And same way with conference season. We get, I know you know this well, Kelsey, we get a lot of conference invitations. Sometimes we pitch, sometimes we don't. And we have to say no to those. I'm fortunate that my career does not depend upon me speaking at conferences. It is nice to be visible, but you can be visible in other ways by sharing your expertise in podcasts like this, or answering questions on forums and Facebook like I do very regularly. And that's been very successful, but it's Yeah, it's certainly something I have to work on. I know everyone wants to go out and travel as much as they can. We're no different. We're going to Disney World as a family in August, which will be the first vacation, of course, that we've taken in at least 14 to 16 months. So that'll be nice. But there's only so much you can do. We certainly need to try to do more, and it's tough because even if I will be even if I will be in Disney World for a week, I will have my computer. I mean, that's just how it is. Even if I put an
Right.
autoresponder on my computer for email, doesn't matter. You still have to clean out the email. I mean, if I was to come back home without even touching my email, I would have probably 4 or 5,000 emails.
Oh, wow.
I know you know how that is. It's just
Yeah.
crazy.
It adds up.
The amount of emails that I receive is ridiculous, even with filters. So it is just something that we accept. And so the goal is, you go in, you have a great day with your family, and then at night, while everyone's in their hotel room winding down, that's when you spend the 60 to 90 minutes it takes to clean out your email. And that's just a regular part of my life, unfortunately, vacation or no vacation.
Have you ever experienced any symptoms of burnout? Because I feel like when we talked before we started recording, we hadn't really touched on
Mm-hmm.
that. Like, have you working that amount of time that you work, the 70 to 80 hours a week, have you experienced any burnout symptoms from that? I know for me, I would get terrible muscle tension in my neck and shoulders, even if I was ergonomically. I think it was just stress, anxiety, heartburn, weight gain.
Well, I mean, I would have to say that the worst part for me, there are definitely health detriments that I would like to unwind. Like, for example, I mentioned to you again the back pain that I had yesterday, just going out and coming back in and unloading the car and carrying I had to carry. We actually we're in a vacation rental for this last weekend, and then we went from the vacation rental to the fair. And the reason we were in the vacation rental is our house was getting fumigated. So as you can imagine, we moved all the pets into the vacation rental. So we came back home on Sunday night after the fair, and I was carrying the two cats in the cage. And again, I'm a big guy. I'm 6'1", well over 300 pounds, very wide shoulders, ex football player and bodybuilder. And I'm shocked at how just unloading the car and going into town and going into the house and unloading all these things were like it wrecked my back because I had not been doing anything. I haven't been to the gym in months, and I have got to do better on that because we're getting ready to go on vacation for a week in Disney where I'm going to be putting 10,000 plus steps on
Wow.
my feet every day. And I probably right now, if we had to go, I probably couldn't handle it. So I've been, slowly kind of getting back to it. And we have a rower, getting back on the rower, walking around the block a couple times to build back up my endurance a little bit. But yeah, that has probably been the worst issue. Now, I have a historical issue with kidney stones. The kidney stones is really interesting. I had kidney stones once about 10 years ago. That was it, one time. And I was, certainly in better shape then than I was now. And I just had this crazy issue with kidney stones. And I ended up having to go into the hospital and get them removed because they just would not pass. And I don't know if any of you are familiar with kidney stones, but they are literally the
Yeah,
worst
I've
thing
heard.
ever. They are the pain that they cause. It is not a good situation. And last November, just before Thanksgiving, I got another bout, and I knew immediately what it was. I woke up in the middle of the night, I knew it was kidney stones. And because it happened right around Thanksgiving, I literally could not get in to see a doctor for days. And so I had these kidney stones, which would not pass for 8 days. And for those of you who know that, is crazy. I mean, I literally did not know I could take that much pain. So for 8 days, I was still having to continue to answer emails and do homework and just kind of find a comfortable space where I would just not move a lot until the doctor could finally get me in to the hospital. And then they went in and pretty hilarious. I mean, you can't help but not laugh. But they go in there, they're like, "Oh yeah, you never would have passed these," and I'm like, "Oh, thanks for letting me know that." After 8 days, I
Yeah.
kind of got the hint. So he goes in and he operates, and they come to find out that there was a little bit of a problem when they went to reach for one of the kidney stones. It shot back, and they couldn't get it. And then what happened was they had some internal tearing, and so I had some internal bleeding, and so they could not get the kidney stone, one of the two anyway. And so I wake up and my wife's standing there. She says, "You want to hear the good news? You want to hear the bad news?" And I'm like, "Hey, I'm all for bad news. What's the bad news?" Yeah, you're going to be coming back here in 3 weeks. They have to do this whole thing over again because they they couldn't get the stone. So the good news is they put in a stent, so at least there was some relief there. But I was not going to be fully healed until they had to go until they went back in and removed the stone. So what did I do the day after? What did I do the 2 days before Christmas? I was back in the hospital getting the second procedure done, which was just fantastic. Well, I mean, the good news is with kidney stones is that once that's done, I didn't have any complications. I was very weak because when you always have internal surgery with bleeding, it devastates you. So I literally could not do anything the entire month of January. Couldn't even get up and walk much because it was just I had no energy. And then February came and they came in, they took the stent out and gave me a full bill of health. And I my energy came back. So by February and March, I was able to go out and about and fine. But I would probably say at least until April anyway, I wasn't fully recovered. And now it's just a matter of, well, I gotta get back to getting back to just doing regular things that people do. I mean, we have not gone out much, and that's totally on me. There's no excuse. You have to make the time for that. And I'm just going to have to start working harder to do that. I'm just fortunate that I don't have any, I don't have to travel somewhere, to do a presentation or something like that until, right now everything is still virtual. I really don't have anything I have to commit to doing in person until next year. So, I mean, I've got time, and hopefully I can make use of that time more effectively, definitely. For sure.
And that kind of brings me to a good question to kind of wrap things up. I mean, do you think if you were talking to someone else who says, "Oh, I also struggle with work-life balance," I mean, is that the first thing that you would tell them? I mean, that health is really what you should be focusing on?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. If I could give anyone advice, and again, this is just my perspective, I have to learn to say no more. I have to learn that I don't necessarily need to take this audit, or I don't necessarily need to complete this project, or I don't necessarily need to fill a hole in my schedule that suddenly popped up because, I don't like to see an empty hole in my schedule. It's okay. And it's okay to manage your time more. It's okay to prioritize your family and outdoor pursuits over your pocketbook or your income. And for the love of God, please start exercising more regularly. We've had multiple associates and colleagues, both Kelsey and I, over the last couple of years, who have just died unexpectedly. No rhyme or reason. Some of them, it's crazy. We're in a high stress field. We are holding, in many cases, especially with my audits, and same with Kelsey, we're holding the livelihood of these clients in our hands. When they invest their site, their marketing budget, their online reputations with us, we take that personally. We don't want to make a mistake and have those sites lose traffic, because in my focus is monetization of bloggers. These bloggers are coming to me either because they've lost traffic and their ad income has dropped considerably, and they're putting their faith in my ability to reverse that trend, or they're coming to me because they have tried for years to qualify for an ad network and they've never been able to. And so our goal is to make that investment work for them, because they can qualify for an ad network, and the next thing you hear is they've quit their job, they've bought a house, or they've bought a second house. And that has also been to my detriment too, Kelsey, because I don't know if you've seen Facebook, but nobody gets more stuff in the mail than me. I am always getting cookies and fruitcakes and alcohol in the mail from these very again, appreciative bloggers, and it's fantastic, but it is also incredibly terrible for my waistline. And my wife is like, "I don't understand this. I don't understand why someone sends you 3 pounds of bacon." I'm like, "Hey, Tiff, they literally made $35,000 this month. Yeah, I think 3 pounds of bacon is probably the least they could do."
Right.
So yeah, there are some benefits, but yeah, I definitely have to work on that. So for those of you on the call who are working 70 to 100 hours a week, whether you have small kids, no kids, kids that are getting ready to move on and transition to college, they grow up so fast. There's only so much time in the day. Try to make time for the other pursuits and other interests in your life. And take it from me, who has not done a good job. Be better.
Yeah,
And
I like that.
thanks. Yeah.
So if anybody wants to find out more about you, where can they do that online?
Yeah, you could type in MediaWise. That's MEDIA, and then WYSE. Y is in yellow. MediaWise. You can find me online on Facebook, on Twitter, MediaWise, on LinkedIn. Casey Markee. I am the number one Casey Markee, Markee in the world. I have literally killed all other Casey Markees. I've dominated Google. I don't believe there is another non-Casey Markee listing in the first 10 pages of Google. So reputation management has worked well there. So definitely drop me a note just to say hi. Follow me on Twitter. And again, get outside.
Yeah.
Enjoy, unless you're in Southern California, and then stay inside.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Casey, thank you so much. It was a great combo. And for everyone listening, don't be afraid to also follow us at StoryShout on all the social medias. And our website is storyshout.co. So thank you all for listening.
Thanks, Kelsey. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you for listening to the Story Shout podcast. Don't forget to review us on iTunes and connect with us on social media at StoryShout or online at storyshout.co. Until next time, stay normal.